morning, everyone. Happy to see everyone logging in here. I'm going to give folks probably about 30 seconds to a minute here to get in. We've got a nice crowd this morning. We had a great registration, so I'm pleased to see that. Then we'll get started. This is meant to be kind of a quick hit 1 hour session, and we hope to have a lot of good information for you. We've got a great panel put together for you, and we're going to encourage your questions and hopefully get a lot of back and forth dialogue going. We decided to use this format versus the standard kind of Zoom webinar just because I think a lot of people have seen enough webinars, and we thought that this might up the interactive part of it. So we're happy to have everybody here, and it looks like we're in pretty good shape. I'm kind of watching the waiting room to see how many of the folks have got coming in. So I'll give another couple of seconds here, and then we'll get going.
A lot of familiar faces there.
Yeah, a great crowd. Good to see everybody. Okay, I think we're in good shape. As I said, we've got a lot of content to get through, so we'll let folks catch up. But again, welcome to everybody. So pleased you're here with us this morning. We were talking as we were huddling here 15, 20 minutes ago that we're chomping at the bit when it's safe to get back in person again. But this is kind of the bridge that we're using to get to that point here, hopefully in April or May of next year when our President's Forum will be back in person. But we've had a lot of, the education part of the Entrepreneurship Institute has not gone anywhere. And so we've been providing these virtual opportunities, not only here in Columbus, but in all of our other chapters as well. So we're very pleased to have you here. We're very pleased to kick off this program this morning. We've got a great group of panelists. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Kurt Heft at EasyIT and let you guys get to the content for this morning. So thanks again very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. So I'm Kurt Heft, CEO of EasyIT. We're a Columbus-based managed IT firm since 1998. For much of that time, we've been members of TEI. We go way back with Jan and Bob and the group. I've moderated many an in-person panel through the President's Forum. This is my first virtual forum, so bear with me. We'll do our best. We have a great guest panel today. I'd like to introduce them one at a time. First, let's start with Gary Calica. Gary, I'd like you to introduce yourself, your company, of course, what your company does, although it's fairly self-explanatory, and then in brief, how has the pandemic and the recession predominantly affected your organization?
Sure. So I'm Gary Calica, president and founder of Rusty Bucket Restaurant and Tavern. We've been around since 2002. It's just been brutal for us. On March 15th of 2020, we closed our doors. We went from, we're a $60 million company annually, and we had to close our doors, and it's just been brutal. We've been able to pivot and navigate through it. We really kicked into survival mode, and I think that everything that we have done throughout 2020 is really kind of paving our future for 2021 to ramp back up into business. I can tell you that for myself, on March 15th when we closed, I thought, this is going to be a 3-month process. Who knew that I would feel the same now about COVID today as I did back on March 15th. But people, it's the restaurant industry. People, we're 51% of the food chain. People still need to dine out, but getting in to dine in is a problem. We had to change our business model completely. We knew shifting to carry out was going to be a big part of it, but when you are a business that is focused on primarily doing in-store dining, and the shift to carry out at that level was very, very challenging. I think we're prepared for it in 2021 as things move forward, and have done very well with it throughout 2019. But it's certainly a challenge, and we kicked into survival mode and just got to get to the other side. I think there's going to be 40% attrition in our business. So,
Gotcha. Thanks, Gary. Bill Hanlon.
Good morning. I'm Bill Hanlon. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for People Services. We're a third-party logistics company based in Canton. We have about 8 million square feet of warehouse space that we operate in 7 states, going from Michigan to Florida, along with trucking services and basically anything that the customer needs done inside the 4 walls. And we're primarily focused on chemicals, raw materials, industrial, and food products. And we don't put them together, don't worry. Anyhow, how has it affected us? Well, it's been 2 worlds, actually. Our industrial business has taken significant hits, and a lot of that is, from shutdowns and so forth, and also major disruption of supply chains, how our clients get materials that are imported, exported, et cetera. And then the food side of the business, or we do an awful lot of packaging products for foods too. Those have been very strong. Obviously, as people have unfortunately not gone to restaurants, but they are eating at home more, and you're seeing a lot more of the basic staples come in high demand. So we've seen, tale of 2 cities for us. And so far we've fared this fairly well. We have been assigned, we were a designated an essential industry. So we never stopped a day. We continued to operate all of our facilities throughout the pandemic with no shutdowns.
Great, thanks so much, Bill. Denise Reg, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Denise Reg. I'm the Executive Director of the Columbus Symphony. As a nonprofit, our world has been a little different, but I think there's lots of learnings we can take from one another. So the Symphony, starting in March, we've had to close down all of our concerts in the main hall. So we've actually stopped doing about 20 of the concerts that we had scheduled between March and the time we were in now. That being said, much like kind of Bill indicated, it's been a tale of 2 cities for us. With a lot of pivoting and things, we actually have weathered this storm pretty darn well. We've managed to keep all of our musicians employed. Even during this period, we've seen growth in our balance sheet. We ended our fiscal year on August the 31st, well into the black. But it's required tons of pivoting, but we've taken advantage of the situation to the best that we could, and actually went to things that were far less expensive, but still kept us in the front of the community, serving it and getting recognition. We did 20 free concerts across the Central Ohio in a period of 9 days. And everything we've done up to this point has been free. I feel for you folks who have got to get that earned revenue in through the door. At the moment, the Symphony is plotting a course to take advantage of what we've accomplished during COVID to show the community what we were able to do for them.
Excellent. Phil Renaud.
Thank you, Kurt. I am the Executive Director of the Risk Institute at The Ohio State University. Our focus is on executive education, and not only executive education, but the education of students with regard to risk management and insurance. We're a member-driven organization, and as such, the disruption to the university has been significant. We see it, whether it's athletic events or frankly, how we have had to pivot in the classroom, where we have gone either virtual or hybrid or in person, but the number of in-person classes have dwindled significantly. So it's a big change.
Sure. Thank you so much. So our theme today is getting back to growth. We have some questions that were submitted prior to this get together, and I will start the panel with these questions. Note that this is meant to be an interactive session, so you'll be encouraged to submit questions via chat. Megan Criswell is coordinating all of this today. I've got her over here.
Good morning, everybody. As Kurt said, I'm Megan Crystal with Easy IT. If you have a question at any point today, please use the chat feature. You can send it privately to me, or if it's a question that you want the whole group to see, please let everyone see it. I will be monitoring those and making sure that we get all those questions answered and making sure Kurt doesn't miss any of those. Two more quick things for everyone. We are recording this meeting. And second thing is, if you want to be able to just see one big picture of whoever is talking, you can hover over. For me, it's in the top right-hand corner and it says speaker view. That way you can see one big picture of who's speaking. And I will hand it back over to Kurt to kick things off.
Great. Thanks so much, Megan. Today, we'll start with Bill Hanlon. Bill, being in logistics, how do you, and given your tale of two cities or whatever, how do you predict the forecast for your business 6 months from now, a year from now, multiple years out, with all the uncertainty of how long this pandemic may last, what it's going to do to the supply chain, and then how does this impact your plan for success?
Okay, well, I'll answer that in a couple of parts. One, I like to find indexes that mirror our activity. And in the past, I've always used the Purchasing Managers Index, and it can usually give me a pretty good barometer on what our business is going to look like. Recently, in the last few months, that has been climbing rapidly, but our business hasn't been climbing rapidly. And that has a lot to do, I think, with disrupted supply chains more than anything else. So now I've gone to a economic group that puts out monthly information that I review, and some of it focuses specifically on our sectors, and they're looking out through 2021, 22, so forth. So it gives us an idea of what that's going to be. What we have to look at this point is, because my crystal ball really isn't any clearer than anybody else's for a lot of things. I look at what are the things that we don't know and we won't know yet, such as what's going to happen with economic policy from with a new administration in the White House. What's going to happen with taxes? What's going to happen with labor? Are we going to have a $15 minimum wage? Those kinds of things, which I can't answer. But what we have to look at is really what's plan A, what's plan B, what's plan C, and have something, have our guns loaded, for when something changes, that we know where we're going to head, and we're not running around like a chicken with our head cut off trying to figure out what do we do now. So we have to look at all those potential scenarios and say, okay, how do I behave? How does the company have to behave if we are to be successful under a new set of rules? And we believe there's going to be new rules. We just don't know which ones they're going to be yet.
Understood. And if I hadn't mentioned earlier, if any of the other panelists would like to chime in, you're more than welcome to on any of these questions as we go. My next question is for Bill Renaud. Easy IT is in the IT business, and in the IT business, we have to have a lot of insurance. And so when this question came in, I kind of prioritized it selfishly. But given your expertise in risk, how has COVID impacted cost and availability of insurance to businesses?
It's a great question, Kurt. And we're in the perfect storm. Not only have we had a COVID hit, but we've also had a series of other large events, whether they be hurricanes. I think we've had 17 named storms this year. Here we are in November, and another storm hitting Florida. We've also had the West Coast fires. So on and on. And I've been in this business for a long time. I spent many years in retail. I also spent quite a few years in the supply chain. It's been since 1985 where we've seen insurance rates spike the way they have in the last year or so. And I don't see it, not continuing in the short run. Property insurance rates are up 25 plus. Casualty insurance rates likewise. And I think COVID, the COVID impact hasn't really struck yet. There's a number of lawsuits that have been filed against the insurance industry seeking business interruption as a result of the business being shut down and impacted by COVID. To the extent that those are deemed compensable, that could have a massive impact on the insurance industry. It's not something that they would have contemplated when business interruption rates were set. And they're certainly arguing that it isn't covered within the four corners of the policy. So I think COVID has yet to be counted in the rate increases.
That's terrifying.
Very.
Yeah. In our industry, cyber attack is up about 600%. And I think the ability to just keep your company insured in the future is all up in the air. So a lot of uncertainty caused by this. And again, we haven't felt the whole COVID impact yet, but in 2021, we will. That's my curiosity on the question. My next question is for Denise. So you're a nonprofit in the entertainment industry, so you've been hit hard by the pandemic. If you could identify only one thing that you think is critical to creating a path for getting back to growth following this crisis, what would that be?
For me, it's really, really simple. I've been telling everybody this. Don't be the deer caught in the headlights of a car. It gets run over. So what I think is really, really important is that I have so many people telling me they're waiting for more information. They can't make plans because they don't have all the information at hand. That will get, for profit, nonprofit, it doesn't matter. It'll get us all killed. So to Bill's point, you've got to have a pivot 1, you got to have a pivot 2, you have a pivot 3, but you can't wait to take action and to make plans. You can do that in a multitude of scenarios, but the symphony is actually getting national attention for the fact that we have moved forward in a very, very aggressive manner, providing more material than we ever have for the community. But if we wait until we have more certainty, we will certainly end up killing ourselves. So that would be my one piece of advice.
Kurt, I got a little bit to add to that if I could. I think as a lot of people I've talked through industry, and not just the restaurant industry, but everywhere else, I think the one important thing is everybody says, well, when things get back to the way they were, and my advice to everybody is things are not going to get back to the way they were. If you're looking at the past as the answer for the future, it's not there. I think you have to think outside the box. You have to be planning into the first quarter of 21, the end of 21, and the beginning of 22, with several different options coming your way. Your plan yesterday should have changed with the governor's news conference. So, my advice is to think forward. Don't think things are going to get back to the way they were. I don't think they will. What is the new normal? And the new normal is going to change every day right now. So you really got to be quick and nimble and think on your feet and plan.
I just want to say, I could not echo that more, Gary. Earlier when you said you're looking at 40% attrition or 60%, yeah, Symphony's planning for 50% attrition when we reopen. Our real problem is going to be when we reopen. We actually have developed a plan and a number of pivots that will get us through this year, and we think very successfully. Our real trouble is going to be when only 50% of the people return to the hall, but I have all the expenses of doing business in the hall to include.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Bill, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the world is different And I agree with Gary. I don't think what we saw as normal is going to be anything we're going to see in the future. But that doesn't say we can't be innovative and think about this. I remember in February when we hosted our last in-person session, we had about 75 people in the room. We then immediately pivoted to our risk series being online. Our first session, we had 500. We wrapped the session earlier this week with 175. So it can be done. We just need to think outside the box, as I think Gary or Denise mentioned.
Great.
Well, I think I'll also add that, you know, when the pandemic came and everybody, you know, we have trucks and forklifts and so forth. You can't work from home doing that. But our essential personnel that were in offices, we set up systems for them to work at home. We really never had anything like that before, and we flipped the switch in a matter of a week. And even things like Zoom, like we're doing now, didn't exist before. So what implications does that have on things like sales calls and those kinds of things? Technology that didn't exist before that got forced to the forefront. And we've all adopted it and seem to be doing very well with it at this point. But I'm sure there's other technologies that are moving forward. And I know we're investing in more technology at this point that, you know, we're going to be looking at how does technology replace people as much as anything else? And how do we get information, better information to manage the business better? So we're making those investments as we go right now.
I think that's a great point. What we've been looking at is what we call the future of work. And AI, if we think of a job in the insurance industry, I'm a claim adjuster and I adjust cars for a living. 2 years ago, I had to go out and see that car and visit the car and write the estimate. How's it done today? A photograph is taken. That photograph is then pushed through some technology. An estimate pops out. And let's say it's only 75% correct. That's 75% of the workforce that is now being displaced. So there'll be new jobs that will emerge as AI comes in and takes over existing jobs. We don't know what those new jobs are going to be, but they will be out there soon.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of normal, what's normal, right? I agree that I don't even think we should be looking to go back to normal. In this respect, we've learned a lot from COVID. COVID has taught us a lot of things that we want to now put into, I hate to sound like a Democrat, which I am, but we can build back stronger with what we've learned during COVID. So building back stronger would mean that all the learnings that we've acquired, the ability to do things remotely, we build those things into a new scenario, and we could end up in a much better place 4 or 5 years from now. It's not going to happen overnight.
Couldn't agree more. Gary.
Yeah.
Sort of we talked about this prior to the meeting starting, so it seems to be the question of the hour as of yesterday. You do a lot of work with the government through the Restaurant Association, both the state government and the federal government. I know you've had meetings with Governor and Don Husted. What are your thoughts on Ohio shutting down again? And what are your thoughts on another federal stimulus package?
Well, I think, everybody saw this press conference yesterday, if you had a chance to view it or watch it. So I think he was sending a warning to us. I think 2 days before that conference call yesterday, I think he was in deep discussion. I know we had a conversation with him, Governor DeWine and Lieutenant Governor Husted. And as of that point in time, 2 days ago, there was no plans to really move anything, do anything different than what was happening. Well, then that changed overnight. And, you know, as cases continue to rise, I think Governor DeWine is getting a lot of pressure from public health officials. You know, the big problem right now is the rural hospitals and with the rise in cases and their inability to be able to handle the amount of cases. They do have room to expand, but their biggest problem is being able to treat people because they don't have staff, whether the staff has come down with COVID or they don't want to work because of COVID. And I think what he was saying to us yesterday, if it doesn't improve, you can see, I can foresee another shutdown coming. Now, 3 days prior to that, he would have told you that I don't plan on shutting it down. You know, it's just a big challenge. And really, you know, part of that conversation was, and he spoke about retail last night. When he spoke about retail last night, you know, he didn't cite it in his call, but they inspected a Walmart in Dublin. And they went into that Walmart in Dublin and it was 100% mask compliance. And then they went to the Walmart in Salina, Ohio, and it was 10% compliance. So it's a big challenge to get people to do what they should be doing, just to follow the protocols. And you know, I think the governor has done a good job all along the way. He has put together advisory panels for every part of industry out there. You know, so he is sitting down at the table, he's listening to people, he's letting people help sculpt what is going to be the new future for them. But when we, as Ohioans, don't follow those protocols, we get into a situation where we are right now. And I think his hands are kind of tied. So unless we see drastic improvement over the next 7 days, I think we can foresee a possible shutdown. Words he used for us was timeout. So, and that was really for restaurants, bars, gyms, you know, and so I do think that there's a good possibility of it happening. And he and the lieutenant governor differ in that. John Husted, lieutenant governor, is more apt to try to keep things open. And, you know, and I think that 7-day period came because of John and saying, hey, we got to give people an opportunity to prepare for this if it's going to come. And I think that's kind of what they're doing. So unless we see drastic change, unfortunately, I mean, it's going to happen again.
Other panelists, any thoughts on that stimulus package or shutdown and what that'll mean?
You know, Kurt, if you talk about the stimulus package, I mean, I think that's just, if there's anything in what I just said about the shutdown, that's the silver lining in the cloud. Because if that does happen again, that will force the federal government to, you know, really move forward on getting the stimulus package done pre-January. You know, all of our conversations, whether it's with state officials or it's people at the federal level in Congress and Senate, or letters to the president or Speaker McConnell or Speaker Pelosi, I mean, is like, look, we can't wait. I think that, you know, some larger scale businesses can survive through this, but the heart of the country is small business, and they need help. And it's not just the restaurant industry, it's everybody. And, you know, so if that shutdown does happen, I think that will force their hand to put another PPP package together a little bit sooner than later. Because, you know, we talked about not waiting with other things. I mean, we can't wait for this. We can't wait for the transition of, you know, to the new president. It can't wait that long. It needs to happen before, because if that happens, that moves into February, and people can't survive that, I don't think. So,
Hey, Gary,
Coming from higher education,
what's that?
we're trying to get through Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know, that's the immediate goal for us.
Yeah.
Because post-Thanksgiving, all classes will revert to remote.
Right.
And that's probably for a week. And and then final exams. And then they're off for Christmas and then return early January, where hopefully things will have turned around a bit.
Well, I'll just comment that, you know, I'm of the belief there will be another federal stimulus package. How big is the question? But I'm hoping that when they do this, there's an adult in the room, because I'm of the belief that the $600 a week federal bonus on the unemployment was a disaster for a company like us. You know, it made nobody, amazingly, when we have an 8 or 9% unemployment rate, we're having difficulty hiring people. And you give them unemployment and $600 on top of that, which is more than they'd get from the state of Ohio. There's no incentive for them to come back to work. And that just, I think, is a bad plan. Okay, I think they're getting 300 in Ohio right now, extra from executive orders. But, you know, I find it very difficult to hire. You know, a lot of ours is just unskilled workers, warehouse employees, forklift drivers, material handlers, and so forth, packaging operators. You know, it's very difficult to hire those people. And if you give, you know, obviously if you give people a whole lot, they're not going to want to work. And in my opinion, that's just against human nature. People need to work. People need to have something that they look forward to, that they're responsible for. That's, and we take that away, and it's a bad thing.
Well, Bill, I agree. There definitely is going to be another stimulus package. It's just a question of how much it is, and you know, not only in regards to what you're talking about with the unemployment, but even just the cap that they have on it right now for PPP. It's capped at $2 million. You know, there was $142 billion that never even was distributed in the first PPP, and that money's still sitting there. And you know, I just can't understand why we can't figure out how to, you know, at least move that out. You know, I think if you do the math on it, 190 billion would do a complete redistribution for everybody, just like they got the first round. So
We do have a question from Matt Maglichic. I apologize if I've brutalized your name, Matt. He asked, can Gary address how gift card purchases for restaurants help during this time? I don't want to assume this is helpful. I'd like to know if gift cards have any pitfalls for your industry.
well, you know, there's several different promotions out there. We run a promotion every year to sell more gift cards, you know, because that money really comes in early for you. You know, you have to expense it over a period of time, but you know, you get the cash in before people use those cards. So it's pretty helpful to us to do that. I had a friend in the industry say, hey, are you still going to run your promotion this year? And absolutely. You know, whether, you know, we're running at 75% volume or 100% volume, it's still going to help us. It is still money that's going to come in, and it's going to help our balance sheet and certainly get us through the end of the year. So it's vastly important for us. Yeah.
Great. Just as a reminder, if anyone has a question for the panel, please just put it in the chat Megan or chat everyone, whatever works for you. Continuing on, just for the panel in general, how does this recession differ from the 2008-2009 recession? And were there any lessons learned during that recession that you've applied to make this period less painful?
Well, I'll start with that. In 2008 and 9, our company was probably having a record year in 2008. And by the end of the third quarter, we had lost 50% of our business. And so we crashed and burned. And I think at the end of the year, our bottom line profit was enough to go get a Big Mac and fries, and that's about it. It was rough, and we had to make a lot of tough decisions. But at that time, we were focused almost entirely on, commercial. I mean, business to business, industrial activity. We recognized that we really, when the economy hit bottom, we hit bottom with it. So we strategically started looking for acquisitions, and those acquisitions, and looking at food operations that we could acquire, and we have done that. That has strategically made a big difference in what we do. So the big lesson that we come out of that is diversification. Now, when we look at this recession, the fulfillment companies that are out there are doing very well. All the mail, don't call them mail order, but everything is coming to your house by small package and so forth. Those operations in our field are doing extremely well because of the demand. So, what's the next thing we should be looking at? Well, obviously, if we can find something that makes sense in fulfillment business, then that's where we should start pivoting to also now, to help diversify what we do and help us ride out the peaks and valleys of the economy.
Well, and I, the symphony in 2009, we didn't make it. We had a shutdown. And we have taken a lot of learnings actually away from that. This situation has been quite different. We entered that recession in a less than favorable financial position. It just decimated what we had left. That being said, we took drastic measures at that time, but fundamentally, getting back to what Bill says, fundamentally what's saving the symphony right now is a concept of diversification in what we do. So we have become far more sort of service-centric as an organization. We had passed a strategic plan in January that called for us to do that, and this gave us an opportunity to really demonstrate how we could do it. But I'll tell you, one of the vital lessons I think we learned in 2008, 2009 is the damage that can be done if in a downward spiral like that, you make the wrong cuts. So we cut our musicians, who are the very soul and center of the symphony during that time. That relationship was damaged for more than a decade. We just are coming out of having fixed that relationship. That is why we are working so hard to protect our musicians right now in terms of their salaries and their employment. And that is absolutely working for us to do that. So I think we did take away some lessons, and I think that those lessons have applied well to the situation we're currently in. But again, there is no replacement for entering a crisis in a stable base, in a stable place to begin with.
Excellent. Jennifer Myers has a question for the panel. Please share best practices your respective businesses have followed to reduce managed healthcare costs while avoiding unaffordable premiums, especially for family plans. And how have you helped workers without passing that full burden on to the company or the worker? Does that make sense?
Well, I think we're all stuck in the healthcare issue. I know we're self-insured basically for healthcare. We have reinsurance, which the reinsurance market is horrid from what I understand. And this year we note that what we've allocated for healthcare, we way overfunded it because nobody's doing anything elective. So we've got a lot of money coming, a lot of expenses that are on the balance sheet, not winding up on the financial statement yet. But we're seeing that grow a little bit. But anyhow, even with that, we know our healthcare costs are down. That we're seeing 6% increases on the reinsurance and the caps that we have with our healthcare, even though we're not using it. So we're trying to find all sorts of alternatives, and as a company, we split about 1/3, 2/3 1/3 to the employee, 2/3 goes to the company of healthcare costs. And we're eating the increase this year. Plus, what we're finding is a lot of employees are saying they're more interested in healthcare than they are in money right now, oddly. And so we're trying to improve the healthcare offering that we have, and we're just eating that also. We're not passing any of that cost along. And we're going to be able to do that because we're going to have a lot more cash available next year because healthcare hasn't been used this year. So, I mean, that's where we're sitting right now.
I have another question for the panel. This one's near and dear to my heart. For those of you that can have employees working remote, do have employees working remote, which is probably all of us to a degree. How are you keeping your employees engaged?
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll just say, I do think that's a really serious challenge. And there have been recent articles that are coming out saying that remote working isn't quite what we thought it was going to be. What I have discovered even at the Symphony is if you leave people out there too long without physical interaction. So we're on a pod system. So we come in, each pod comes in 2 days a week. But I really felt the need to go to that because I really do think it's human nature. Going back to human nature too, so much of what we deal with on a regular basis is human nature, right? Going back to human nature, I think that when people spend too much time at home doing the work for work, that they start to see work as an encumbrance to what they've got going on in their lives. And it's really difficult. So we work really, really hard at the Symphony, keeping everybody in, doing regular Zoom meetings, et cetera, et cetera. But for bigger companies, I can only imagine what the challenge must be.
So for us, I guess for us, even for me personally, was never a real advocate of working from home. This is one of the things COVID forced us to pivot on, which was, to move working remotely. And it actually has worked out pretty well for us. And I think some of those key reasons is we have not let it change what our structure was, certainly for meetings and certainly for accountability. So we still have departmental meetings, we have all manager meetings, we have, everything as much as normal as possible, but it is done remotely. So you are checking in with your department head daily. So I think as long as you don't let the structure of what you did in person go away, I think there's still pretty good success for it. And certainly, again, this is one of those things, this is where COVID has taught us something, because I would have not said what I just said pre-COVID. I wouldn't. But I would say 95% of our people that are working remotely are more productive now than they were when they were in the office. Especially if you're both parents are working, and and with school out and the challenges with all of that, it's given everybody an opportunity to, hey, I can put this in the morning, do a little laundry in the morning, get my kids off to school, and I don't have to be at work right now, but I know I have this time here in my day. And I've really heard that a lot from our our working mothers and our single mothers out there. Tremendous amount of this is really good for me, and I'm more productive. And we have seen more productivity out of them because they'll pick up and they'll work from 7 to 9 or 8 to 10, and so it does. But I think the structure is the biggest key to it. You have to stay structured.
Yeah, Kurt, this is Phil. I'd like to weigh in on that because I think the grand experiment of telecommuting was out there for a couple of years. But many organizations, as Gary indicated, were fearful of sticking their toe into the water. What COVID did is it forced it. And what we've seen from a number of different organizations, similar to what Gary just mentioned, is that it works. And in some organizations have realized that certain jobs will likely never come back to the office environment. But the other side of the coin, and something that I think about a lot, is the long-term impact from a mental health perspective. You know, we're social beings, and to be isolated in our homes, yes, productivity may be holding or increasing, but over the long run, I seriously worry about mental health impact.
I would agree with that. We have some employees that seem to thrive working independently at home, and we have others that absolutely can't take it, particularly those that are just single individuals that are truly alone when they're at home. And so we accommodated bringing them back first, but they wouldn't function long term without social interaction, and that's been tough.
Yeah. And one of the things I'd add in here is we have everybody back. You know, we brought them back at the beginning of the summer or something like that when all the rates were dropping. But one of the things that I think for a lot of companies is what's their culture? And when you start having people working on islands, basically, how do you maintain culture? How do you maintain philosophy, communication, etc., with all those people? And that has presented a challenge, I think, for a lot of companies. And I know of talking to other executives of companies, you know, they're never planning on being full-time in the office again, but it's going to be a hybrid, and you will have to basically apply that I want Wednesdays off or Monday, Friday, or whatever. And it has to be an agreement about what you're going to do. And I think the last part is that becomes kind of difficult for managers is we're not going to evaluate people on what they do, but more what they get done. And it has always been the 8 to 5, they're working, you see them, you know, you can walk up to their desk and ask them questions and things get done, etc. Now when they're gone, if they're doing it at 8 o'clock at night, who cares? It's getting done, but it's not the same dynamic anymore. And we have to start judging people on what gets done, not on what they do.
That's a great
Well
point.
said, Bill.
And it brings up a good question. We're all learning how to measure our people, but those soft things, the culture thing, what one best practice have you found keeping your remote people engaged in your culture?
Yeah, I can chime in, Kurt. Again, we just, on Tuesday had an all manager meeting, which was a Zoom call for about an hour and 30 minutes. We really kind of just used that time with them to really kind of be transparent with them, tell them what's going on, be financially transparent with them, talk about, we had our COVID task force on there presenting different ways that we are adapting to training due to COVID. Again, it's communicating with them. Now I'll say this, on the other side of that is we've had comments like people are tired of doing Zoom calls, and it's burdensome to them sometimes. If you think about certainly restaurant managers, if I have a Zoom call, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that's going to take an hour and a half out of my day. Plus I had to prepare for it. And, it just takes time away from them. But I think just, one, being transparent with people, and you have to continue to talk about the culture and talk about the things that you continue to do for them, to make sure they're getting what they need, and listen too. Every meeting we have, there's a survey after it. So we respond to what they have to say to us. But you can still keep them engaged. It's challenging, there's no doubt, but we've all heard at the beginning of this call that, what's the new normal going to be? That's part of what's going to happen. And is that going to change? Every single day it's going to change. And we have to be nimble and think outside the box and figure out how we're going to continue to move forward. because things are going to change every day.
Well said. What? Let me ask this to the panel. So might be our last question. What qualities do you think leaders need to exhibit getting through this crisis and going forward? What can they do to help their people, help their business?
I'll weigh in on that one. I think they need to be empathic. We need to listen to people's concerns. We need to understand some of the challenges that they're going through, not only from a work perspective, but also from a personal perspective, where family members may have been impacted by COVID, or they themselves may have been impacted by COVID. So I think the ability to be empathic, the ability to be transparent with our staffs is of absolute importance.
Yeah.
I would add, I think being very honest with your employees and all that kind of thing is critical to what you do. Tell them the truth. They accept the truth. But I think, we all watch the news, and if you watch the news, you think the world's coming to an end tomorrow. You have to look at the optimistic side of the business, and you have to express that optimism. Employees want to hear what you're thinking and believe what you're thinking. And if you're optimistic about what the future looks like, they will be. If you come in hanging your head and saying, the world's coming to an end and so forth, all your employees are going to feel the exact same way, and it will have an impact on performance. So you need to be able to smile. You need to be able to talk to them. You need to be able to be confident in what the plans are and be able to say to them, stick with us. We got a plan. We're working through it. We've been successful so far. We're going to ride this thing out and be good. I think that has a lot of bearing to a lot of employees about what they feel their future is and how the future of the company is going to be.
Well
I
said.
agree.
Yeah, Bill, I would say, you're absolutely right, and I couldn't agree more with that. And we've heard that from our people that, like, hey, I really appreciate that, I know you're working this hard for us, and this is what you have going on, and the fact that you're including us and being transparent with us. I think you'll get them to buy into some of the things that you're doing right now and use them. That can be your strength to get them to do what you need them to do. Because the more that they know, the more you can share with them and give them those goals that they need to hit, they'll see it. And if they know we need to hit this goal for us to get this back, it makes a big difference. But then they see the progress over time, I remember, March 15th, and that day we said, that was one of our conversations, like, look, this is where we need to shine. As a leader, you need to step up and lead through adversity. And if you can do that, you're going to be successful. And we've sent that message clearly throughout the company. And it's important to send that message.
Yeah, I would say that if I had to pick just one, I would say it would be confidence. We should know where we're taking our companies and what we're doing. And we should be assertive about getting our employees to understand that we have a plan, that we know where we're going. The world is scary for them, and we can't guarantee anything, but we are prepared to pivot and respond as needed to make sure that we take care of business. And I tell you, it is amazing the results you get from your employees when they all feel like they're part of that vision and to be forward thinking with that vision. If we do this, this is where we're going to land. So let's just stay in there and get it done.
So
Phil, any comments?
no, I just said well said.
Oh, great. Yeah, agreed. We are at about, just got another question.
Hey, Kurt,
Yes.
Yeah, if I could, I'd like to send one message to the folks out there, and that's in regards to advocacy.
You're jumping ahead of me. I was just about to say we're at 8:55, and although I have some great questions coming in, what one last thing would you like to tell our participants today prior to me throwing it back over to Bob? Gary, take it away.
Sorry, type A. Yeah, advocacy. I think it's important. I can't tell you throughout my career and throughout my life how many times I've heard people say, "Well, what's my one voice going to make a difference for?" Well, I'm going to tell you that it makes a difference. For the last 15 years that I've been in business, I've been going to Washington, D.C. As a part of the Ohio Restaurant Association and going to the Public Affairs Conference and advocating for our industry. And everybody says, "Oh yeah, like that's really worth it." I'm going to tell you right now, in these times, the 15 years of work that I put in prior to now paid off this year. So you do have a voice. Write a letter to your senator, to your congressional member, to your state representatives. It's important, and I think it's even more important to get involved locally in your state. You heard me speak about Governor DeWine earlier, and the governor has put together advisory panels for almost every industry, whether you're in the logistics industry or you're in the construction industry, the restaurant industry, the insurance industry. Find out who is your advocate, who's your local trade association. That's a good way for you to get an in, to get involved and get your voice heard. They will listen to you, but a lot of the folks that are doing a lot of the legislating, really don't understand how it's affecting the businesses out there. So we as business leaders need to be the one to educate them, and as constituents, tell them what's going to really make a difference for us. So I think advocacy is just huge, especially right now. So.
Couldn't agree more.
Kurt, I would say, don't be afraid to be disruptive. And I use the term disruptive in a positive sense. And that is, we talked earlier, think outside the box. But there's a lot of disruption ahead. And that is good, because people are going to start to look at things differently. Processes will change. Cultures within organizations will change. So again, don't be afraid to be disruptive.
Denise, Bill, closing thoughts?
Well, yeah, I would agree with that, with what's said about the advocacy. We belong to a number of trade associations, both nationally and in Ohio, and we have made sure our voice is heard by our local representatives, by the governor's office, and so forth. And we have done that, well, since the pandemic has started about COVID, but we've done it for years, over a multitude of things. So when government officials know who you are, what you represent, and you're not crying wolf, they're going to listen to you. The other thing, unfortunately, they listen to is donations to their campaigns. So, I would recommend that, sometimes, unfortunately, to get heard, you need to be able to, have a donation to them to get in front of them, especially the first time. It's not a bribe. It's not everything. It's the way politics is done a little bit. But for you to be heard, you need to do more than just talk. You need to put your money where your mouth is sometimes.
Great.
I have just one thing to say in parting, and that is keep the faith. I mean, when everything is said and done, it will be all of us for our companies who will set its future path, will get it out of this mess. These may be dark days today, but if we don't keep the faith, we are sure to have worse outcomes than we do if we do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. What a great panel you've been. Yay for taking your time. I would like to toss this back over to Bob to wrap us up.
Great, we're at 9 o'clock. Time management was awesome for you all. I'd like to thank Kurt and Megan at Easy IT for kind of putting the legwork on this together for us, and then to our panel, Bill, Denise, Gary, Phil, you a lot of time just in prep and getting these questions together as well. So thanks to everybody, and thanks to you all for taking a part of your morning with us here. We will be, again, live when it's safe to do so here in spring of 2021. So we can't wait to see everybody in person again, and we'll keep you all up to date. Bye, everybody. Have a great Thursday.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Have a great
Thanks.
night. Appreciate it.
Stay healthy.